Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 21st of January, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your latest weather information from the National Weather Service. You can find that on Marine VHF or your NOAA Weather Radio, online anytime at weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. That'll take you to the same place. The weather info line is open, of course, at 800-472-0391. And if you've been paying attention on social media this afternoon, on Facebook, on Twitter, or on YouTube, you probably heard about some weather changes happening now in Southeast and in South Central Alaska. An awful lot of rain in Southeast, and some of that will turn into snow across South Central Alaska. Let's talk about the advisories that are posted at this point. Urban and small stream flood advisories continue tonight until about 3 o'clock in the morning for many areas in southeastern Alaska. There's been a copious amount of rain falling across the region over the last 36 to 48 hours. Ketchikan is one of those places, seeing more than 9 inches of rain in over 36 hours there. That may be one of the greatest totals we've collected in the winter months, especially for Ketchikan there. So very soggy conditions. They're keeping close watch on the Ketchikan Lake Dam. They don't have any imminent threat right now, but they're keeping watch on it just to make sure things don't get out of hand there. Again, a flash flood watch is posted for that region on top of the urban and small stream flood advisory. So again, in that area, they're watching the water levels carefully. Around South Central Alaska, the same moisture that's been moving towards southeast is now looking like it's going to move from south to north into the greater Anchorage area, the western Kenai Peninsula, the Copper River Basin, and the Matanuska and Susitna Valleys. All of this will start up the snow machine perhaps as early as Thursday afternoon and evening along the western Kenai Peninsula, and that will gradually move north through the nighttime hours, and we'll probably see a couple inches of snow initially from that. Now the trick with this forecast is there will be a band of snow that sets up, and for some places like the Kenai Peninsula and maybe as far north as Talkeetna, that band will stay in place from Thursday afternoon and evening all the way through Saturday. And you're going to get a lot of snow from that. But for other places, that band may drift on and off of your area, including Anchorage and the Matanuska and Susitna Valleys. For those places, it'll feel like 2 waves of snow. The initial band may set up 1 to 3 or 2 to 4 inches of snow initially, including areas around Anchorage. The second band, though, should be heavier. When that moves back over, it's going to snow again from around Friday all the way into Saturday. And you may see another 4 to 8 or 5 to 8 even 9 inches of snow in some cases. So it could be a significant snowfall in total. By the time it's all done on Saturday, you'll need your shovel for sure. Here's a look further northward. Not a whole lot going on across the Arctic coast. It's cold. There's been some snow showers there, but the wind, where it's whipping off of Kotzebue Sound and across the northern, western, and the interior of Seward Peninsula, is making it feel like about 50 below. There's a danger again with that wind chill level, so wind chill advisories are posted through tonight and into early tomorrow morning, and that now includes the area for the interior of the Seward Peninsula, and that'll go through tonight and again tomorrow morning. So be advised that it could be a pretty cold night. If you have to step out of the wind, make sure you're dressed appropriately for that winter weather. Nothing much doing in the Bristol Bay and southwestern Alaska. A lot of clouds and pretty common and reasonable weather for this time of the year. So let's take a look at the satellite picture, and as you look out into the Bering Sea, you can see the overall circulation here across the North Pacific and the Bering. We've got our north and easterly flow blowing off of the continent. Pretty dry conditions there, areas of fog and then snow showers and rain showers developing around the Aleutians today. For the Pribilofs, a little more cloud cover in your neck of the woods compared to what we're seeing around St. Matthew and up towards St. Lawrence Island. Considerable more wind though across the Bering Strait coast and into the Norton Sound region. And then a little bit more unsettled weather as you get into the North Pacific. As we look at the whole of Alaska, you can see the circulation that's moving moisture right into southeast. Wave after wave has been moving from south and southeast right into the panhandle of Alaska. And again, just a tremendous amount of moisture. Once again, in places like Ketchikan, over 9 inches of rainfall just in the last 36 hours. And then the northern parts of the Gulf, another round of moisture collecting around low pressure here, and you can see that other surge down to the south. All of this is working its way northward, meeting up with the cold air that you've probably noticed in south central today. A bluebird day today, not so much the case tomorrow and going forward into the weekend. And for the interior, we've seen some snow showers today, a lot of cold air, and that's really what you're seeing the satellite picture depict tonight. A lot of this low dark cloud cover isn't really clouds at all. It's just the infrared satellite picture showing us that there's plenty of cold air to be had. Putting this in motion one more time, you can also see the effects of high pressure pushing air southward along the Chukchi seacoast. That air is moving very quickly across the Bering Strait communities and sending most of that cold down into the central parts of the Bering Sea at this hour. Let's take a look at the surface weather map. Here's one wave of low pressure there sitting across the northern Gulf. That's at 983 millibars. The warm and wet air is just pushed right up against the higher train of southeast. Behind that, drier weather wrapping in very quickly. And then on the north side, a lot of dry air sitting across the Kenai Peninsula. This will gradually fill in with clouds as we go through tonight and tomorrow. Some hit and miss snow showers across the interior and northward toward Denali National Park and in around Fairbanks, and most likely flurries later tonight. Areas of light snow across the Arctic coast for the Chukchi and the Beaufort Seacoast and the Kotzebue Sound region with a wave of low pressure across the north. As we head through tonight, that may move just a little bit further to the east and northeast. You can see a substantial amount of dry air across south central and southwestern Alaska all the way into the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island primarily looks dry tonight, but you can see that there's moisture just sitting to your south. Watch for those east and southeasterly winds to bring rainfall to your area as we head into tomorrow morning. Rain and snow showers are possible for the Aleutians and parts of the Alaska Peninsula. For southeast, we expect rainfall to continue as we head through tonight and into tomorrow with a wave of low pressure across the southern parts of the Yukon, 990 millibars there. By Thursday, another surge of warmer and wetter air will move through south central Alaska. This is what we expect to start the snow across the western Kenai Peninsula and mainly north of Clam Gulch. As that continues working its way northward, you'll see snowfall accumulate as we head into the evening hours for places around Anchorage, the Matanuska, and the Susitna valleys. Warmer air will continue flowing into southeast, and most likely that means more rain for you. Again, the urban and small stream flood advisories continue at least until tomorrow morning, and we'll see what happens after that. Out across the west, Dutch Harbor in Alaska, and many from Sand Point toward Cold Bay and Falls Pass, and all the way out toward Shemya, will experience a better chance for rain and snow showers throughout the day. Looks like snow showers for the Pribilofs with dry conditions from the Kotzebue Sound region into Norton Sound. Unalakleet still looking at a fairly clear day, but it will be cold. And wind chill values just to your north could be as low as 50 below. We don't expect that in Unalakleet, but it doesn't look like a very warm day for you. Trough of low pressure across the Arctic coast, and that is still focusing some snow showers across the north and areas along the Alcan border for Thursday. By Friday, you can see the effects of that warm and wet air running into the cold as an upper level disturbance is moving in from the west and then slowly works its way across the south central and southeastern sections of Alaska. It will be very slow to end that precipitation, and that's why we're saying this could be a long duration snow event for the Anchorage area and into the Matanuska and Susitna valleys. For southeast, that will also enhance the rainfall opportunities for many, especially across the northern Gulf Coast. As that south and southwesterly wind kicks in, you'll gradually get into some drier weather, perhaps by early parts of the weekend. Meanwhile, for areas along the Yukon Valley, especially the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, it looks like a fairly dry day for you. For areas north of Dillingham, it looks to be mainly cloud-free into Norton Sound and Nome. A little bit further west, though, to St. Matthews, some snow showers are possible there. High pressure trying to squash some of this, but you may see snow showers around the Aleutians there and a wide bank of clouds across the central and western parts of the Bering Sea. Snow will continue for the Arctic coast. Most of that looks to be relatively light. And the main moisture corridor, though, stretches from Kodiak Island all the way up through the Cook Inlet area and into Northway. So watch for a better chance of accumulating snow closer to the Alcan border and north of the Copper River Basin and the eastern Alaska Range as we go into Friday night and Saturday, especially along the areas east of the Denali Parks Highway there. Now take a look at temperatures today. Even with the rain and the clouds, with that southerly wind, it makes a lot of difference for those temperatures. Most areas in southeast were in the mid to upper 40s. Places like Ketchikan and Craig were in the upper 40s to almost 50 degrees. Hyder, though, a little bit colder at 32, 46 in Sitka, and around the low to mid 40s for Juneau. Around Yakutat, 41 today. Prince William Sound in the 20s and 30s. Cordova was 33. Valdez only 28. 26 in Seward, 32 in Homer. Teens for Kenai and Anchorage. So a pretty big difference there with that cold air settling into some of the lower terrain. 14 up around Talkeetna and Cantwell. It was 2 below in Fairbanks today. Eagle was 9 below, 2 above in Northway. As you get out toward Fort Yukon, it was 3 degrees above zero, about the same there for Arctic Village, 6 below for AKwx Pass, and you can see some of the cold there around Atkasuk as well. It was 12 below, with 2 above for Barrow, 1 below for Kaktovik, and it looked like Kivalina today checked in at 11 below. Around Galena, temps there hovered pretty close to 10 below today, 3 below for Nome. Unalakleet saw about 2 below by 4 o'clock. For Southwest, around Bethel, it was 6 degrees above zero. Looks like Nunivak Island was about 9 degrees above. McGrath only 2 by 4 o'clock this afternoon. Bristol Bay in the teens and 20s. Kodiak Island in the mid-30s, low to mid-30s for the Alaska Peninsula, and upper 20s for the Pribilof Islands, with Shemya at 36 by 4 o'clock. Now, overnight low temperatures will be cold, especially where the skies have been fairly clear today. Expect readings anywhere from 15 to as cold as 30 below in places like Galena, 11 below in Nome, 15 below in Barrow. Looks like single digits and low teens for Bristol Bay, 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Above freezing for Kodiak, Prince William Sound in the teens and 20s, and Southeast still in the lower 40s. St. Paul from 25 in the morning to 27 in the afternoon. Anywhere from 5 to 10 below across the middle Tanana Valley. Northward, not a whole lot warmer there. The Arctic coast running around 10 below tomorrow. 3 below in Nome. McGrath will be as cold as 11 below in the afternoon. Low 40s for Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound, and the Cook Inlet region in the 20s and 30s. The Alaska Peninsula in the lower to mid-30s, and Southeast once again in the mid to upper 40s for your Thursday. Flying weather is still going to be hit and miss across Southeast. Watch IFR conditions linger across most of the region, especially the inner channels throughout the daytime tomorrow. The northern Gulf Coast and many around Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula will experience IFR conditions as those very wet south and southeast winds start to move in, and we'll see that worsen as we go through the nighttime hours and of course into Friday. MVFR conditions for the Arctic coast, the Bering Strait, most of the Pribilovs and the Alaska Peninsula, and then south of the Aleutians. Here's your pass conditions. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass are expected to be MVFR through a good part of the day with snow showers in the region. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass for right now look to be VFR and smooth sailing through Rainy Pass with VFR conditions there, and for Windy Pass for your Thursday. Isabel Pass, we expect to see visual flight rule and clear sky there for Mentasta Pass by the afternoon. Tonita Pass, we expect to call VFR through your Thursday afternoon, and changing conditions in Portage Pass with the weather front moving in, expect IFR conditions by late afternoon, and Chilkoot and White Pass will likely maintain IFR conditions throughout the day. The freezing levels show that warm and wet air moving northward, but our surface freezing line is still hovering near the north and eastern Gulf Coast. With that overrunning, slowly nudging that line northward, we can expect maybe some mixed precipitation around the northern Gulf Coast, but primarily this is going to be a situation that is a snowmaker for south central and a rainmaker for southeast. Icing potential shows levels around 5 to about 6,000 feet where that wettest air is occurring there. Occasional widespread moderate around Kodiak and then across the northern Gulf Coast, generally east of Cordova to Yakutat, and then just off the coast of southeast. Also some pockets of icing there, likely across western sections of Canada. Our jet stream shows a split flow, one that is bringing the cold into the interior between 60 and 80 knots, and one that is keeping the moisture and the active weather generally south of Alaska, but we have this new southerly bend in the jet that is pushing a piece of that northward into the northern and eastern Gulf Coast, and that's what's locked in the rain across southeast and what looks to be starting up the snow machine for south central Alaska. At 9,000 feet, a very pronounced trough of low pressure that extends from south to north, and with that we're getting that moisture flow running along that southerly wind, 40 to 50 knots coming right over the Gulf, and a south and southwesterly flow moving into southeastern Alaska. On the other side of that, though, is the cold, and that's dropping southward along the western coast from 20 to about 30 knots there, and more of a northeasterly flow as it crosses the central and eastern chain. At 3,000 feet, that trough is kind of meandering a little bit more across the interior, but the effect is the same. We've got our moisture moving in from the south and southeast. Wind speeds are a little bit stronger across Haida Gwaii and southern parts of southeast, up to 50 knots there. Around 15 to 30 knots across south central. Wind speeds slow down a little bit across the middle Tanana and middle Yukon valleys, around 10 knots or so, and pick up again around the Brooks Range, around 20 to 25 knots, bringing in some of that colder Arctic air off the northern and western parts of the Canadian provinces. Northerly winds continue through the Bering Strait and off the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta around the northeast, around 30 knots or so. And central and eastern parts of the chain, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, are looking at northeasterlies between 30 and about 40 knots. Kodiak Island still running around east and northeast through Shelikof Strait around 25 knots for tomorrow. Turbulence potential, we'll be watching this change throughout the day as that frontal boundary works its way northward, but by late afternoon expect the best amount of chop probably across some of the mountains and the passes there, Shelikof Strait and the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula, especially closer to the mountains, and Seward may be one of those spots. Below 6,000 feet seems to be the primary threat for the greatest amount of chop there, reaching occasional moderate. And across southeast, especially in the inner waterways, probably below 6,000 feet, you'll run into some occasional moderate there. For the southern half of the Seward Peninsula, below 4,000 feet, some chops expected, and also across the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula and through the central and western chain, and any gaps and bays and passes may experience some gusty winds from time to time. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with a look at the ice report and, of course, the rest of your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
Atmospheric researchers have confirmed that the Arctic haze, a polluted air mass that forms each winter over the Arctic region, is widespread and deep, increasing scientific interest about its effect upon the climate. In 1983, scientists aboard a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration research aircraft took airborne samples of the haze. From the atmosphere above the Brooks Range in northern Alaska. And over Barrow, Alaska. Flying through the haze at altitudes from 50 to 28,000 feet, the researchers analyzed the chemical structure of samples collected by instruments on the plane. A preliminary air sample analysis by Dr. R.A. Rasmussen of Oregon Graduate Center indicates the haze largely is composed of a chemical compound, PCE, and hydrocarbons from fossil fuel combustion. This tends to substantiate the theory that the haze is caused by atmospheric pollutants being carried into the Arctic from principally Europe and northern Asia.
12. CN dropping off. We just passed through an incredibly thick layer, went off scale on the ethylometer. It also is dropping off now on the NEF. Now we're coming back into, look at it, we're coming into another layer. And you'll be picking it up in a minute. I'll pick it up in 1 minute. Yeah. So we're coming, the CN is coming in. It's just as good as the other one. Look at it. The NEF is starting to pick it up.
Well, this is our trace here. This was the previous layer.
Fantastic. Oh, no, just the thin one. It's falling off again. See?
I went completely off scale.
Good. See, that's fantastic. No, this is just a little patch. See it fall off again? Okay, no. Went through a clean area, now we're coming back into another patch. You'll be picking it up shortly. Well, the NEF is coming up again, too. It's really patchy.
There we are.
There, see? Oh, look at it. Look at it climb.
Yeah.
Hey, fantastic.
We had a rather diffuse layer with not very strong concentration. Here we saw a rather stronger layer. I was then able to reduce the resolution time of the instrument, and then here we saw an incredibly thick layer, back down to nothing down there. Oh, gee. Hey, hold it. That's 8, 10, 11. 11 counts. Here we are now in another very strong layer here, and I hope if my instrument goes off scale again,
Hey, the NEF is climbing higher than it's ever been now.
Just whacked off scale again.
Yeah, I know. Pretty low already. We're at 100 meters. We're going to go lower.
Time 23:47. We're holding in the haze now at 952 meters. We passed through descending at about 3 minutes ago, and now we're back up into it and holding steady right in the center of the haze.
This filter is so-called millipore filter. All of the air was restricted to go through the center by means of the plastic mask. You can see the black spot in the center is the deposit of particles. We can analyze these by a variety of chemical and physical means to study the carbon, both the black carbon and also any organic type of carbon.
Heading the score of scientists on the NOAA study is Dr. Russell Schnell.
We found the haze layers to be more numerous than anticipated, and the intensity of the pollution exceedingly larger than anyone had expected. And finally, the pollution was spread over much larger areas than we had originally thought.
Flight data will be used in developing improved climate models for determining the effect of the haze on the Arctic climate.
Here's a look at the sea ice edge from our Alaska Sea Ice program. You'll notice the Arctic coast, of course, is all filled in all the way through Norton Sound now, and the ice edge is south of St. Lawrence Island, south of Nunivak Island, and filling in along the coast all the way into Bristol Bay. There's also some light concentrations there across the northern parts of the Cook Inlet. This ice edge update is up to date every day. You can always check that out anytime at weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. Here's a look at the marine forecast now for southeastern Alaska. Some stronger winds on the northern and southern Lynn Canal, up to 40 knots there from the south with 8-foot seas, 6-foot seas around Stevens Passage. And then as you get a little bit further south, southerlies continue in the Clarence Strait from about 7 to 10-foot seas are expected there, with the south and southeasterly flow coming up the coast. Seas running around 15 to 16 feet. Again, with more of an easterly flow the further north you get toward Yakutat, and that's around 35 knots as we get into Friday. Still blowing off the coast from the east. Southerlies will switch up just a little bit there south of Sitka, 35 to 40 knots with 17 to 18-foot seas. And the inner waterways running around 20 to 30 knots there on Friday, with 4 to 5-foot seas in the central and northern inner waterways, still running around 6 to 9 feet for the Clarence Strait by the end of the week. For south central, northerlies will be the rule as we head through Thursday there, 20 to 30 knots there coming down Cook Inlet with freezing spray a threat. Northeasterlies west of the Barrens around 35 knots, 25 knots coming in from the east on the eastern side. Northeasterlies moving across Prince William Sound at 20 knots, and then southeasterly winds outside of Prince William Sound around 25 knots with a 10-foot sea. For Friday, you can see the southeasterly winds picking up there across Prince William Sound, and just to the outside, those winds are as high as 20 knots, so not terribly bad across the north and western Gulf. Northerly still running down the inlet there, 15 to 25 knots, 7-foot seas coming in from the northwest. Around the western Barrens on the eastern side, northerlies there at 20 knots, and north and northwesterly winds crossing Kodiak Island around 15 to 20 knots for Friday. For the Alaska Peninsula, a broad northeasterly flow on either side there, freezing spray on the north, 9 to 15-foot seas on the Bering Coast, and 14 to 15-foot seas on the Pacific side, with those northeasterly winds switching to more of a northerly flow on Friday, 30 to 35 knots on the Bering side, 30 to 40 knots on the Pacific side, with 13 to 14-foot seas as we head into Friday afternoon. For the Aleutians, northeasterlies moving along the central and eastern chain around 35 to 40 knots there, 15 to 17-foot seas on the Pacific side, with 15 to 18-foot seas extending all the way out toward Atka. As we get a little bit further west of Kiska and Adak, you'll notice those winds drop off to about 30 knots or so. 15 to 17-foot seas are expected for Thursday, and we'll see those diminish even more to about 11 to 13-foot seas as we get into Friday. 15 to 20-knot winds there. Otherwise, north and easterly winds continue for the central and eastern change. Not a whole lot of change from Thursday to Friday for the central and eastern sections. For Thursday along the west coast, north and easterly winds are expected from St. Lawrence Island all the way down to the Pribilofs. They really pick up, though, as you get south of Nunivak Island. 40 knots or so with 10 to 16-foot seas around the Pribilofs, and freezing spray is going to be a threat again as we go through Thursday with those stronger winds and, of course, the cold water and the dry air moving off the continent. Northerlies coming through the Bering Strait and dropping southward through St. Lawrence Island around 20 to 25 knots, and still running a little bit stronger in Kuskokwim Bay, but not as much as what we saw on Thursday. They'll diminish to 35 knots for Friday afternoon. Northeasterlies continue around the Pribilofs with a 12-foot sea for Friday. And across the Arctic coast, easterlies moving through the Beaufort Sea around 15 knots. Northwesterlies coming into the Chukchi Sea coast at 20 knots there. For Friday, northerlies coming into Point Barrow, southwesterlies around Prudhoe Bay, and westerlies moving over Kaktovik in the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Otherwise, a north and northwesterly flow coming into the Chukchi Sea coast and into the Kotzebue Sound region around 15 to 20 knots for Friday. Recapping tonight's weather, it's still going to be very wet in southeastern Alaska. A copious amount of water still falling in that region, and urban and small stream flood advisories are expected to continue until at least the early morning hours of Thursday. If you're in a flood-prone zone, you want to keep watch on some of the water levels there. Places like Ketchikan are doing just that, and a flash flood watch is posted just in case the Ketchikan Lake Dam has problems. They're not expecting that to happen, and there's no imminent danger, but that is being watched. To the south and across the north and western parts of the Gulf Coast, 967 millibar low is lifting northward with another surge of wetter air that's moving into south central, where conditions are cold right now, but by the end of the day tomorrow, snow will begin moving northward up the Cook Inlet and the western Kenai Peninsula. Winter weather advisories are posted starting tomorrow and going all the way into early Saturday morning for the Susitna and Matanuska Valley, Copper River Basin, the greater Anchorage area, as well as the western Kenai Peninsula for accumulating snow, in some cases around the Talkeetna Mountains that could total up to 12 to 18 inches of snow. Lesser amounts southward, but this may be a significant snowfall for all of those places that I mentioned. Across the interior, snow showers are expected for tomorrow, including areas around the eastern interior and northward. That will be on and off along a trough of low pressure that's drifting around and moving northward slowly. By Friday, it'll be a little more concentrated across the Arctic coast as another band of snow moves over south central, and watch for occasional rain and snow around Kodiak Island with no accumulation there and cold weather in the west. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.